Recently, an incident so shocking and unexpected left me utterly shaken. My mother-in-law, in an act of deliberate malice, took my passport and burned it right before my eyes. The small booklet, filled with stamps and memories of my travels, caught fire instantly, its pages curling into ash within moments. I stood there, paralyzed by disbelief, as the last remnants of my freedom disappeared in the flickering flames. This wasn't just an act of destruction, it was an attack on my identity, my independence. My planned vacation to St. B's Island, which I had been eagerly anticipating, was abruptly and cruelly stripped from me. When I turned to confront her, demanding an explanation, she merely smirked. Her voice was cold, devoid of any remorse. "Since you're nothing but a stranger to me, you won't be traveling anywhere. You'll stay right here, where you belong, beside me." The words sent a chill down my spine, but what truly shook me was my husband's reaction. Peter stood beside her, offering nothing more than an amused grin. No protest, no outrage, just silent complicity. He had known, he had allowed it to happen. The realization gnawed at my insides. While I had long suspected my mother-in-law of harboring ill feelings toward me, I had not anticipated this level of cruelty, nor had I expected Peter to be a willing participant. The two of them shared a glance before chuckling, as if they had achieved some grand victory over me. I took a deep breath, fighting to steady my voice. I refused to let them strip me of my identity. "My name is Kayla," I declared firmly, my words slicing through the thick tension in the room. "I'm 30 years old, and I'm a linguist." My profession was not just a job, it was my passion, my purpose. As a linguist, I devoted my life to studying and teaching languages at the university, bridging cultures and sharing knowledge. My work required frequent travel, taking me to different countries for extended periods. For years, I had built a career that allowed me to immerse myself in the beauty of language and connection, something I had never imagined giving up, even for marriage. And yet, 5 years ago, my life had taken an unexpected turn when I met Peter. Returning to my home country at 25, I had not foreseen marriage in my future, but Peter had changed that. Despite the challenges of my career, which demanded months away from home, we had made it work through endless phone calls and late-night emails. We had married when I was 27, and throughout the years, Peter had always reassured me of his unwavering support, or so I had believed. Now, standing before him, feeling the sting of betrayal, I questioned everything. After the horrific scene with my mother-in-law, I left for the airport, intending to return home and process everything. It had been 6 months since I last saw Peter. Despite the long flight and the emotional turmoil, I clung to the hope that perhaps, once we were alone, we could talk, really talk, and find a way to mend what was breaking between us. When I arrived home, Peter was not yet back, leaving me to wander through the familiar yet strangely distant space we shared. As expected, the house was in disarray. I had always reminded him to keep things tidy in my absence, yet every time I returned, I was met with chaos. Normally, this would have irritated me, but today, I pushed my frustration aside. All that mattered was seeing him again. As I busied myself in the kitchen, the sound of the front door creaking open made my heart leap. Finally, he was here. I turned with a bright smile, eager to embrace him after so long. "Welcome home, Peter, it's so good to see you." His response was tepid. "Oh, hi Kayla, you're back." I blinked, my smile faltering. That was it? After 6 months apart, we haven't seen each other in half a year. "Peter, aren't you going to say you missed me?" He shrugged, already moving past me. "We've been doing this for a while. I guess I'm just used to it. I'm tired. Is dinner ready?" A lump formed in my throat. This wasn't the warm welcome I had envisioned. Still, I tried to push forward. "Yes, it's ready. Let's eat." Dinner, something that should have felt intimate and comforting, was instead filled with an unsettling distance. Peter barely looked at me, his attention glued to his phone. Every few minutes, he'd glance down at it, his fingers moving across the screen in silent conversations I was not a part of. "Peter, why do you keep looking at your phone?" I finally asked, unable to hide the hurt in my voice. He barely glanced up. "What's the problem? We've been talking over the phone for months. There's nothing new to discuss." His words sliced through me. That might be true, but we're finally together again. Shouldn't that matter? His patience snapped. He put his phone down with a thud, his eyes narrowing. "You just got off a plane, but I'm the one exhausted from work. Just drop it." I felt the sting of his dismissiveness. "I also came straight here after work. Don't talk to me like that. I didn't ask you to rush." You chose to come home immediately, he said coldly. I stared at him, my heart sinking. His words carried an edge I had never heard before. You don't have to be so cruel, Peter. Despite everything, I missed you. A tense silence followed, thick and suffocating. I had rushed home, eager to reunite, only to be met with this distant, detached version of my husband. And then, in a tone that sent ice through my veins, he muttered, if you're going to act like this, maybe you shouldn't have come back at all. You're being annoying, Kayla. The word struck like a slap. Peter stood abruptly, pushing his chair back with force. Without another glance, he stormed out, leaving his untouched dinner and a hollow ache in my chest. Alone, I sat at the table, staring at my uneaten meal as silent tears slid down my face. This wasn't how our reunion was supposed to go. I had imagined warmth, love, and connection, but instead, I was left with an emptiness I couldn't ignore. The next morning, the tension lingered. I greeted him softly, "Good morning." His response was anything but warm. "I envy you," he muttered bitterly. "You get to relax at home while I work." I frowned. "That's not fair, Peter. I work too, preparing for the next training, summarizing reports. It's more than you think." He scoffed. "Yeah, but you can do it from home. Must be nice. I wish I had a job where I got to take half the year off. Enjoy your time at home, princess." I stared at him, speechless. This wasn't my husband. This was someone else, someone resentful, bitter, and slipping further away from me. As I tried to process everything, my phone rang. My stomach twisted when I saw the caller ID. My mother-in-law. "Hello, Kayla here." Her voice was saccharine sweet. "I heard you're back. I also heard you upset Peter." He was quite angry. And just like that, I knew, this battle was far from over. I didn't want to. The words barely escaped my lips, a faint murmur swallowed by the thick tension in the room. My reluctance was palpable, but Peter didn't care. He scoffed, rolling his eyes as he grabbed a beer from the fridge, popping the cap off with a flick of his wrist before downing it in one gulp. "What are you mumbling about?" he sneered, tossing the empty bottle into the sink with a loud clink. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to scream, to fight back, to demand an ounce of fairness in a situation where I had none. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. I was cornered, a pawn in their plans. There was no real choice, just an illusion of one. So, I did what was expected. I made all the arrangements for the flights and accommodations for our trip to St. Bert's Island, just as Peter and his mother had insisted. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. The night before our departure, sleep eluded me. Restless, I tossed and turned before finally giving up and stepping out of bed. The house was eerily silent except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. Then, I noticed something. Peter was missing. Curiosity, or perhaps instinct, led me toward the living room. My steps were careful, quiet, as if my body already knew that I wasn't supposed to hear what was coming next. Peter was on the phone. His voice was hushed, urgent. "It's okay, Mom. I'll be there first thing in the morning as planned. Please handle the passport issue anyway. Seriously, I'm looking forward to it. I'll make sure to introduce her to you." I froze. Introduce her? A dull ache formed in my chest. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A sickening realization crept over me like a shadow. There were secrets. There were always secrets. I tiptoed back to the bedroom, my mind racing. The pieces were falling into place, each one painting an even darker picture. My in-laws had been controlling, manipulative, but this was something else entirely. I needed to stay vigilant. The morning of our trip arrived. I packed our bags with methodical precision, ensuring everything was in place. My passport, an item I never thought I'd need to guard so fiercely, remained tucked safely in my pocket. I didn't trust them, not anymore. Peter and I drove to his parents' house. As we pulled up, my mother-in-law greeted us with a too-wide smile. "Oh, Kayla, it's been a while. Good to see you. We're almost ready. I just need to grab a few things, so it might take a little while," she said, her voice laced with an artificial sweetness that made my stomach churn. I forced a polite nod. "Take your time. Oh, and Kayla, could you bring the carry-on case from the other room? It's heavy, so get Peter to help you." Something about the request felt off, but I complied. As I returned with the case, I noticed the quick exchange of glances between Peter and his mother. Then, I saw it. She was holding my passport. Before I could react, she smirked. Now you can't go on the trip to St. Bert's. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean? I'm going to burn this passport right now, she said, her tone sickeningly casual. The words didn't register at first, but when she moved towards the kitchen, lighter in hand, dread clawed at my chest. What did you just say? My voice came out in a whisper, laced with disbelief. She turned back, her grin widening. I was just using you to handle the trip arrangements. You're a stranger here, you'll be staying behind. Too bad. Betrayal, sharp, searing, undeniable. Before I could intervene, she flicked the lighter. Flames licked at the edges of the passport, consuming it in seconds. The paper curled, blackened, disintegrated into ashes in the sink. Peter cheered. Yeah, Mom, we made it. A slow smile crept onto my face. By the way, whose passport was that? I asked, feigning curiosity. Her smirk faltered. Yours, of course. I took it from your handbag. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my actual passport. You mean this one? Her eyes widened in horror. What? That's not possible. I shrugged. Seems like you burned the wrong passport. She looked frantically at the ashes, realization dawning. Whose passport did I burn, then? I guess it was Peter's, I said smoothly. Chaos erupted. Peter turned to his mother, fury contorting his face. What have you done? I told you to be careful. I only found one passport in her handbag. Who would have thought it was yours? She screeched. I don't care, you didn't check properly, and now look what happened. They descended into a heated argument, each blaming the other. Peter then turned to me, desperate. Hey, Kayla, do something. I let out a laugh, sharp, bitter. Oh, now you need me? After cheating, lying, and scheming? You and your mother are disgusting. His face darkened. Who do you think you're talking to? I met his gaze, unwavering, a pathetic excuse for a husband and his equally vile mother. Before he could retaliate, my father-in-law entered the scene, demanding answers. When I explained everything, his expression darkened with fury. The trip was cancelled on the spot. But the consequences didn't end there. My mother-in-law faced a divorce. Peter was disowned, banned from returning home. I proceeded with my own divorce, demanding alimony from both Peter and his mother. They paid, begrudgingly, but in full. Stripped of their wealth and influence, Peter and his mother found themselves struggling, their once perfect world crumbling. His mistress abandoned him, leaving him to face his failures alone. And me? I used the alimony to start fresh, a new condo, a new life, free from deceit and control. I traveled, embraced different cultures, shared my experiences with the world. I had been broken, betrayed, but in the end, I won. And I was never looking back.